Hi, Mark, and welcome to the Supraconscious Leadership Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here. I'm personally very, very excited to hear a little bit about your story because I have a personal interest as well, which we're going to get into with some of the stuff that you've done yourself. So please give us a little introduction. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me on your podcast show. It's always an honor, and I have great respect for anybody who puts in the effort as I have done with my own podcast. But my name is Mark Pattison, and I played in the NFL. I'm the first NFL player to ever climb the seven summits. I've just recently completed writing a book called Finding Your Summit and debuted #1 on Amazon, so I'm really jacked up about that. I also have a podcast by this name of the same name as my book, Finding Your Summit. I've done almost 300 episodes, so I've been doing that for quite some time and like knee deep into some amazing people that have really helped transform kind of who I am. And then for work, like how do I fund all this stuff? Because I certainly didn't make enough money when I was playing in the NFL. Times were different way back when, but I've been running Sports Illustrated the last 10 plus years, took them from number 17 to #1. I'm really proud about that. And I have a whole system behind that. But, I'm just out there doing a lot of keynote speaking right now and have my hands full doing a bunch of cool stuff.
All right, that was pretty a pretty good summary, but we'll dive right into if that's okay with you. Okay, so when was this idea of the seven summits born? Like around what time? What were you going through? If you want to speak to that in your
Sure.
personal life, spiritual, and whatever phase you were going through at that moment.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing to acknowledge is this whole idea that we all go through bumps, in our life of whatever. I mean, tragically, and I hate that I'm even bringing this up right now, but a very close friend of mine, his son was in Bozeman 2 nights ago, and it was shot, killed in some stupid, irrelevant thing that doesn't matter about anything, and I can't even imagine his sorrow and his pain and all the other things that go along with losing a child. I was going through my own bad patch. Fortunately, it wasn't that, but it was 10, 12 years ago, and we, like I said, my whole point is that we all go through tough times, and so often that when you walk into your office or your gym or someplace else, and you casually, hey, how you doing? Everybody's great, 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 and I wasn't so great, and so I was in this kind of this stuck space. And finally, and this lasted for a while because a lot of times, like, you just don't snap out of things. And it wasn't so much I was that depressed or anything. It was just a difficult situation with now my ex-wife. And at the end of the day, what I decided to do is set a massive goal. And that goal was to try to become the first NFL player. And so I call those a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. And the thing that's great about that is I think it would have been easy for me with my athletic background to say, let's do a 10K or a marathon or something. Even though those are great goals. I wanted this to be something that I didn't know anything about. It scared the heck out of me. Like, where do you even start doing this stuff? And I was a hiker, but not a climber. And those are two dramatically different things. And so, anyways, that's how the idea like was germinated. And when I took off on this whole quest, and so many amazing things have happened by really stepping into that fear.
Okay. Question, what around what year was your very first summit?
2000, 2013.
2013.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of experience. And let me ask you this, Everest, was that like towards the end or the middle or the beginning of your journey of the seven summits?
Yeah, that was at the end, and it should have been at the end. At the time, I was like, "Hey, where should I start?" And with only the consideration of the older you get, the harder it gets, just because it's age and things break down. Even though I'm in great shape, but there was so much wisdom and knowledge and just experience that you need to really have tucked away in your pocket by the time you get to Mount Everest. The other mountains are wicked, but this is just a whole different level. Like on Denali, you've gone for 3 weeks, and I'm in Antarctica. I'm down there for 3 weeks, and living in tough conditions and climbing up ice walls and things like that. But when you're talking about Everest, you're there living at 17,500 feet for over 2 months, and that that just itself blows a lot of people away because they thought, oh, you just like a road trip. Hey, let's drop into Greece and jump down to the beach for a day or two, right? I mean, it's not like that. You're there sleeping on ice and rock, eating bad food, losing a lot of weight, going up and down, avalanches coming down on you every day, frigid environment. And you just need to have all your bag of tricks that you have from the journey that you've been on to really, like anything, learn the craft of how to climb, especially a big mountain like Mount Everest, the highest mountain in the world.
Let me ask you, if you can speak a little bit about your training, which I'm sure it has changed and shifted, as you have throughout the journeys. But, you know, was there a lot of, aside from the physical demand that you've had to put on, and the muscle you had to gain and all these things and the nutrition, was there an aspect also in regards to like nervous system regulation, your mental health? Like, did you have a team supporting you? Did you have like also the spiritual aspect of it? How did you incorporate that into the prepping for these journeys?
Yeah, good question. I think a couple things happened. And again, this is just what you learn in life by just, stepping into it, not being afraid, which I think is half the battle. So many people are scared just to take on gigantic goals or have a complete life change, type of thing. In my case, I think there's two significant things that happened. Number one, I moved out of Southern California, Hermosa Beach. I was never a beach guy. I moved to Sun Valley, Idaho. So you're going from sea level to 6,000 feet. I go from this, millions and millions and millions of crazy, crowded, city, like all cities, like all big cities and all the problems that big cities have, to this small little quaint, 4,000 person, ski resort in the middle of Idaho, right? It was crazy. But as I've got mountains, I'm surrounded by mountains. And so by being in them every single day, the benefit I didn't realize beyond just trying to train at altitude, because when I initially moved there, it was more about just the physical aspect of it. But the blessing, and this is answering your question, the blessing was by being in nature and slowing everything down and letting the birds chirp and the butterflies flutter and elk. This morning, there's an elk the size of a horse that walked across the street as I'm going out this morning. I climbed a mountain this morning at 6 o'clock in the morning. Um, and the amount of therapy of slowing everything down and just thinking about life and where I'm going, and maybe there's a problem, maybe there's a conflict, whatever that is, it's amazing. Like, I've solved so many problems, and that has been my meditation, my therapy of just being, and mostly like 99% of the time I'm hiking by myself. So I'm not, chatting and trail talk with somebody else behind me. It's just me out there for 2 hours, climbing up, coming back down, seeing the magical beauty that God created on this earth and the river flowing through it. And like I said, all the other stuff around. I mean, it's just like I've been living this way now for a number of years. And that doesn't mean I have to work for everybody, but that was my therapy and my healing to kind of get back to where I need to be.
I love that you mentioned this. How has your relationship with God or a higher, whatever you believe in,
Mhm.
changed throughout the seven summits?
Well, this is something that none of people ask about, and I haven't really talked about, but I just did a TEDx talk, and I kind of went on the edge of this, but I'll lay it out really quickly. Um, so um, when I got to the top of Mount Everest, 29,032 feet, as it all played out, I was the last guy standing up there, and everybody else had gone down, including my Sherpa. And I'm sitting there, snowblind in one eye, hadn't eaten in 3 days, running low on oxygen, and I'm asking myself, how in the heck am I going to get up this mountain? I was so weak. I'd been climbing for 10 hours throughout the night and I knew I still had another 8 to 9 to get back down just to Camp 4 at 26,500 feet, which is also the death zone. Kind of long story short out of this is I'm making my way up the top. And by the way, also stepping over my tent mate from Antarctica, Don Cash, who we tent mated together in 2019. I stop at the balcony. The balcony is at 27,500 feet. So I'm looking down on, like, it's 1,000 feet below the camp, and I'm by myself. My Sherpa's left me, and I've completely run out of oxygen. And I'm at the very end, and I sit down on my butt, super steep slope, and all I want to do is shut my eyes for 15 minutes and lay back and take a rest. But I knew if I did that, that I would never wake up again, like so many other people had been in that same circumstance. And it's really interesting what happens when you get in that moment where all 10 toes are on the edge of life. I mean, like, seriously, all 10 toes. And a number of thoughts came in. My wife, my daughters, my friends, my closest family. Nothing else mattered. Nothing else had substance. And as I'm sitting there trying to figure this out and trying to dig up some inspiration, like just to get back up. Remember, I was the last guy off the mountain. All of a sudden, this Russian guy comes from behind me, and he stops. And I'm pointing to my regulator, which is behind me, but I was so weak I couldn't even take it off. So I'm pointing at him, and he's going, "Nushki, Nushki." And so I just interpreted that as nothing because I knew I was probably out of O's. And so we were kind of doing the sign language where I was pointing down to my Sherpa to tell him to stop because he had an extra tank, and I needed that tank to keep to live, to breathe, to re-energize. And so off he went, and he stopped, and he got the Sherpa to stop, and I slid down on my butt and got up and stumbled and methodically got back down to this guy, my Sherpa, 300 yards below me. I've sat and thought about that moment a lot. Maybe it was me just hallucinating or something, but I am convinced that was an angel that had come down to inspire me to get back on my feet, to keep walking when I say, coming down, and go give me enough strength so I can get back to my daughters and the people that my loved ones, so that I could touch them again and keep going because I knew that they needed me more than anything. And so it's just a weird thing. Like I can't explain it, but it was just a out of body by myself on top of Mount Everest trying to like fight for my life.
Thank you for sharing that. One of the reasons why I asked that is because I've personally had a near death experience. So, to me, there are certain moments in life where we encounter very similar moments like that, that they're like big ahas and realizations, and just like, are there any qualities that you feel have changed, or developed or refined or transformed within yourself throughout the seven summits?
Well, there's been so much, I mean, just like, I mean, the question that I'm interpreting from you is just kind of like, what have you learned and what have you taken forward and what has happened? And one of those things that was a major blessing, I mean, like a major deal to me, at least, was, let's go back to my NFL career. And back in the day, just like today, I was getting a lot of, well, like all NFL players, there's a lot of attention that's fed your way in just a gladiator type sport. And when I started climbing the seven summits, it was about Summit 4, which I was down in South America on Aconcagua, down in Argentina. And I started to get a bunch of attention again. And so this time around, um, I wanted to redirect that attention to my daughter Amelia, who suffers from epilepsy called petite moles. And what those are, 8 to 15 seconds. They're multiple times a day. It's like you go and unplug her, and plug her back in. And she battled that for 20 years, and it was awful. And so I created this campaign called Amelia's Everest. And with Amelia's Everest, we had a bunch of fundraisers, and I know a lot of famous people, and I had these people come and using their name to fill up churches, and we raised a ton of money, and and it just went all to epilepsy. And it's just when it goes to wherever, you're just hoping that whoever is the recipient, the epilepsy foundation, that they're going to take it and they're going to be great stewards with that money. But every every time we did this, we also had my daughter get up and speak, and not long, just like 3 minutes. And hi, my name is Amelia. It's almost like AA type thing. Hi, my name is Amelia, and I have epilepsy. And so and it kind of, as we are going, and it was starting to make her stand up more straight and get more confidence, and getting away from people calling her stupid and dumb and all this other stuff. And anyways, the long and short of it is, um, the last 4 years, Amelia has been with meds, seizure free, living in New York City, kicking ass. And she overcame that. And so, and I'm not saying it was because of me, but I'm just saying at some level, I feel like at least by doing something and trying to do good and help others, it really, inspired me for sure. But there's at least 1% of the effort that we put in that resulted in this miraculous recovery of her, like overcoming this thing that she had been battling for all these years.
100%. That's beautiful, Mark. Mark, um, I have an understanding that you're an author, keynote speaker, right? Former NFL player. How do you work with like organizations and leadership in regards to the leadership aspect of it? Can you speak a little bit about that
Yeah.
kind of work that you do?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a pattern, right? I mean, it's just like the stuff that has happened to me, the things I've done haven't happened to me by accident. And I think that's the biggest point. And somebody doesn't have to become an NFL player. I also want an Emmy Award, a Best Picture Emmy Award for climbing up Mount Everest, which is really about my daughter, by the way. But you know, these things are shiny, and I do understand that. And I know that not everybody can do what I did, but there's a million other things that somebody can do. And I haven't even got into what your story is, but they could be a woodworker, or they could be a car maker, or they could be a barista, or I don't know what it is, but you know, there's a certain pattern, and and a lot of what I talk about, is telling these stories so they understand, like, here's how I got here and I barely made it off, but it's because I tapped into the system that I've been using all these years, and that got me there, and then also got me off, that got me into the NFL, and then how I transitioned after that, that allowed me to take Sports Illustrated from number 17 to number one, how we won an Emmy Award. Those are, at some point in time, you got to say that's just not luck, right? And so what I'm trying to do is, like, hey, if you put in the right kind of effort, the daily discipline, you have the right kind of moral compass, the right, you're looking at the North Star, and doing the right thing, and do good unto others and contribute to a charity. I mean, there's just a bunch of things in there that I try to talk about. I was just did a talk last week in Sun Valley at this library. And one of the things that there's, like, here are the 5 pillars that, I visualize and watch away with. And one is, like, you got to control that inner voice that we talked about before. Like, you can't do it. You can do it. You can't do it. And it doesn't matter whether it's me, you, or anybody listening to this podcast, that we all have the ability to do certain things, but we also have that, whether it's a friend or coworkers or just your own head saying you can't do it, and that self-doubt. And again, one of the things that I said, one of the things that really helped me, Sun Valley people, is moving here to Sun Valley, and the last 9 years marching around in the forest and up on top of these mountains and these ski runs by myself, just like trying to say, no, you can do it, you can do it, and then by doing it and having small little wins, that gets you there. So I've just got a whole playbook of stuff that my coaches taught me a long time ago that I've carried forward, and it, time and again, it has led me to these amazing opportunities to step through and achieve, things at a high level.
Thank you, Mark. Let me ask you, aside from like keynote speaking and conferences and things like that, do you provide like any one-to-one, or do you have like any coaching programs or courses
Yeah.
or anything like that?
Yeah. I created a kind of a workbook called What's Your Everest? I actually wrote it on Denali in 2017 in a blizzard for 5 days. It was minus 90 on top. I didn't wasn't able to summit that year, so I had to come back and do it all over again. But when I was sitting in that tent for 5 days, I wrote this whole thing out. And there's a whole pattern on how you like, and everything is metaphorical. Like when you want to finally change your life and you're ready to step into those certain things, like how do you show up at base camp? Right. And so I kind of, and then again, it's metaphorical, but let's get you ready to just get your mind right. And how do you do that? And once you got all those things ready, then let's step into what I call the summits, SUMMITS, the seed of an idea. Then you unleash it, you move it, you measure it, you improve it, you traverse it, which means things happen. You got to overcome those things. And then you ultimately get to your summit. And, it's a beautiful thing to go through. But I got to tell you, like, I do coach, and I love interacting with people and trying to help them as much as I can. Where I find the biggest drop off from everybody, well, not everybody, but most people, the only difference between myself and most people, swear to God, I'm not that talented. It's my little secret. I'm just not that talented, but I'm relentless, and I'm determined, and I do it with daily discipline. I do not ever miss a day, ever. And that's maybe somebody else that's listening would go, that dude's over the top. Maybe I am. I know one thing, my system works. It's worked for me. It's worked for these coaches. It worked for Nick Saban. It worked for John Wooden. It worked for Don James. I'm just copying what those guys taught me, and like I'm producing different but similar results that those guys and different, coaching things that they did. So I'm passing along the secrets that those guys lied. So I'm not inventing anything new.
Thank you, Mark, for your honesty. I appreciate it. So, I can identify with that because for the past decade, I've gone down the rabbit hole of personal, professional, spiritual development. And at the end of the day, came back around into the spiral, coming back to chopping wood, carrying water. So it's very it's very interesting.
I love that.
Uh, yeah, to hear you say that. And let me ask you, for Aconcagua and in particular, I know I'm assuming in a lot of the podcasts you speak a lot about Everest, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah. That's, by the way, that's the only thing anybody cares about. They don't want to care. They don't want to hear about Aconcagua, but go ahead.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask it for my personal interest.
Yeah.
What can you tell me about that mountain? Was there anything like, are you able to communicate? I know it's going to sound a little woo woo, but that's okay. The people that are going to hear this are also a little woo woo. Were you able to feel like you can communicate with the mountain and kind of like receive messages or guidance, or really connect with the essence, or that, the presence of of the mountains?
I think one of the things that um, you know you're not talking about you're walking or when you're down there for 21 days or something, okay, and you're having to pack most of your stuff up, and while you're building red blood cells up so that you can handle the altitude, it's almost 23,000 feet, and then you come back down, and then you sleep there again, then you go back up, and then you come back. So it's kind of the shuttling up and down, up and a little bit higher, a little bit higher, a little bit higher, you're coming back down. And typically when you're on these different ropes, um, you're separated by about 50 feet. So when you're talking about, you're not staying at the Four Seasons going up this side of the mountain, right? And there's no really showers, and going into the bathroom, all those things are just super rural, like it was for the settlers that came out here in, 1800s. And so because you don't have people necessarily next to you, and there's these hours apart, there's moments in time every hour or two you kind of come together and you kind of spread back. Um, your mind's just going and going and going, and all you're staring at is these beautiful mountains and these streams that running through. and these occasional like crazy animals that are sprinting across, and it is the most beautiful thing to see. And it's just amazing how calm your mind gets and how much peace you get when you don't have that frenetic energy just surrounding you. I'm trying to think of that movie years ago with Billy Crystal and somebody else. And anyways, they go out and they're going to be wranglers for the week or two, and there's just like from New York and crazy guys, and by the end of it, they're just all calm and all the temperature's gone down because they've been out in the middle of Montana or Wyoming or someplace. And so anyways, it's just that's what I found for me is part of this thing, and you just got to like know that you're not going to have any connectivity on your cell phone, and there's really no Wi-Fi and all that kind of stuff. So how you feel that time is your own imagination and problem solve on things that you're going through.
Thank you for sharing that. Is there any kind of like message that you feel like an overall message that you have that you normally like to share for people, like a takeaway or a lesson in particular or anything like that?
I've got so many little markisms, that are out there. One that my coach used to say, and this doesn't really answer your question probably the right way that you want to hear it, but you know, the frustration of life a lot of times I think comes from the inactivity of feeling like you've making any progress. And so the little thing that a coach told me years ago, he used to always come up with his finger right in my face, was a football guy now. And he would say, and I've carried it forward, it takes a little more to make a champion. And although that's kind of it's got a football slant to it. If you really think about it, it's if you want to either be exceptional. I mean, I'm not saying like you have to be exceptional like you're the next president of the U.S., but I'm just saying exceptional for you, for each individual person. It's so easy to be ordinary, and it's so easy to not be motivated because that's what human nature is. And it takes effort to make sure that you want to get out of bed every morning. And so that's why I used to say, if you want to be basically what you're saying, you want to be exceptional, you want to go win the Pac-10 championship and go to the Rose Bowl and maybe go on to the NFL. Like you got to rise to a different level in order to to be able to, in this case, compete. But also, I think in life, it takes extraordinary effort. And a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times, I think some of the things that somebody can achieve by putting that effort in, it might be a 10K. There's no rules to any of this, but for everybody's at a different place. But by doing something that you didn't think was possible, that you made possible, just gives you such a great sense of accomplishment, I think, knowing that you're trying to rise above what everybody else is doing.
Thank you for sharing that. And everything you share, I'm sure it's perfectly synchronized with what I need to hear and with what the audience needs to hear, even if it feels like it doesn't go straight into the question. So, do you feel Mark self-realized after doing the 7 summits?
I think this, I can't even believe I'm telling you this, but I'm going to reveal my age, which is 64. And I still feel super young at heart because I'm out, trying to improve every day. But I tell you, like life has been such a journey. This book we are just talking about, Finding Your Summit. Um, I couldn't have written this 5 years ago, 10 years ago, because I didn't have enough wisdom, on some of these different things. And like every different people come from different places. Some want to get bigger and faster and stronger and lose weight, and somebody else just wants to become a better person. And how do you do that? And how do you fill your life full of gratitude and appreciation, right? And I think for me, there's all these different levels um, and I'm still trying. I'm still learning, and I'm learning because a lot of times when I hike, I'm open. I'm hiking with Oprah, and because I've got these little buds in my ear, I'm listening to podcasts like yours, and I'm trying to listen and learn from other people who've come before me or what their journey is, because everybody's journey is different, to really understand how I can improve my life.
Thank you for sharing that. Mark, I we will put in the description of the podcast all of your links and everything like that. But just in case, if you could share some of those, if you know it by heart,
Yeah,
like if you
easy.
know your Instagram or anything
Yeah,
like that, if you could
it,
repeat the name of the book and stuff like that.
sure, sure. So my website, all easy, markpattisonnfl.com, all kinds of stuff there. One. Two is my Instagram and all socials are Mark Pattison at Mark Pattison NFL. It's got a similar theme. And then the book and the podcast are Finding Your Summit. Finding Your Summit book debuted #1 on Amazon, selling really well, is available on Amazon. And I think, as they say, where else? And the cool thing is I'm launching an Audible.
I was gonna ask about that.
Yeah, so that's coming. So just because that's a lot of times that's the way that I consume this content we were just talking about and learning, getting better, blah blah blah, is because I can move and be reading through my ears, somebody's book and how they did it.
Yeah. Do you know when that's coming out, the Audible version, or not yet?
I'm told it's under review right now, so the next 2 weeks. It just got pushed. It's processing right now, and I don't know if it's 5 days or 10 days, but really soon. So we're on May 26th as we're recording this today. So I'm sure by the 10th of June, it should be live.
Okay, very cool. Nice. And just to kind of finalize, are you working on anything right now that you want to share aside from the book? Like it could be your any other hike you're working on or any other project or anything like that that you want to
Well, yeah,
share?
well, I love keynote speaking, but one of the things that's really cool is I'm leaving this week to go to Montenegro. Montenegro, I didn't even know. I was asked to go to Montenegro to speak, and I said, "Of course, I want to go there. Where is it?" So I had to learn about the geography of where I was actually flying to in Europe. But it's part of the old Yugoslavia, and when Yugoslavia broke up in all these pieces after the war in 1990, which is Croatia and Serbia and these other places, Montenegro is at the very bottom on the Adriatic Sea. So I'm flying there for 10 days to go speak and take their corporate group on a leadership climb. It's going to be amazing.
Very, very cool. Mark, and just to kind of finalize, is there like any messages or anything you want to share with the audience and with myself?
Um, Gosh, there's so many messages, but I really view my life as making the impossible possible, and I really feel like it's that same way for everybody else. We all have the capacity to do amazing things, and never putting limits. These are all part of my Marxisms, but never putting limits on what your potential um, uh, potential is. Right? You can do anything. So that's really the whole key, and if I can assist anybody in helping people get there and achieve those different things, then great. And if somebody else has a different process, great. And I think there's a lot of ways to achieve, not just Mark's way. I just know from my way and what I've taught, it has produced all these amazing results. And so, like, I can't wait to go just try new things. And I mean, I've accomplished some things, but my list is gigantic on what I have not accomplished. And so that's what I get excited about. I've never ridden an elephant. I mean, why not go do that, right? It'd be great.
Following your joy, your excitement, that's to me that's very important. Because a lot of the times you can get caught up in life without including making time for any of those things. Thank you,
Yeah.
Mark. I mean, it has been amazing. Is there anything else you want to share before we go?
No, I mean, we could go on for 5 days talking, talking shop, and I'd love to learn your story sometime. But like I said, I'm truly grateful for you having me on and asking these really insightful questions. And if there's anybody out there in the audience that needs my help or whatever, reach out. I'm available. I love to talk and find out other people's stories. That's how I learn a lot of, especially finding your summit, all about people overcoming adversity and finding their way. Like the adversity out there runs deep, right? On a lot of people have to be healed. I had to be healed, right? And I'm still healing. And other people are fighting through their own battles. And I have amazing amount of compassion and humility that anybody even asked me to speak or whatever. So I don't take that lightly. So, anyways, I appreciate you having me on today.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. And to finalize, is there any quote or saying or advice that either you have or a mentor or viewer has given you that has kind of like stick with you, and we can kind of leave that as the ending?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff out there, and I am going to feed you something in 1 second because I'm just looking. So one of the things I do is I I spend a lot of time. Um, I'm kind of stalling just a little bit. Like
No,
when
no
I see
worries.
something when I see something that's kind of inspiring to me, and I need to read it, and I'm just randomly going to go look at something that inspired me at one time. So I'm not picking anything here. Um,
Thank you for doing this, by the way.
yeah, we don't experience life. We experience the life we focus on. Think about that. We're
Could you repeat
typically,
that one more
yeah,
time, please?
we don't experience life. We experience the life we focus on. And typically, what I tend to think about is where your focus goes, your energy usually follows, right? And so, let me give you a couple more. Um, Talk to yourself versus others, right? Your brain is an antenna. Um, Discipline, different from self discipline, doing something you don't want to do, doing something you want to do, but not doing it to be a radiator, not a drain. I'm not sure what that means, but let me give you one more here in part of my Markisms. Um, so this is the last one. Everything you want is on the other side of your fear.
It's a really good one to kind of
Yeah,
end it.
yeah,
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your journey, and these beautiful reminders for all of us, including myself. So thank you. Thank you for being here, Mark. I appreciate it.
yeah. Thank you. I again very grateful, and we should do it again. Thank you.